everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Adrian Dels Reyes, and I'm having a great night. I hope you are as well. Today I'm going to be pitching you on a classroom action research project for my history class. All right. Now, I want you guys to do something for me. All right. Everybody close their eyes. All right, perfect. Now, I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you guys to say the first thing that comes to your mind. All right. When you were in high school and or college, what was the most boring, tedious class that you had? And go. History. Okay, exactly. History, right? A lot of history out here, and maybe a few math classes. Okay, yeah, I got you. Okay, so this is what I've experienced as well. All right, even in my own experience, growing up, history classes were they're very structured, but it was very tedious. It was you come in, you open up your textbook, you read chapter 6 on the conquistadors and why they invaded where they invaded, or some European country that did the same thing as the other European country. You read it, right? It's there. Professor or educator says, all right, answer the review questions at the end and or write a paper on what you just read, right? Same thing week after week. Maybe you have some vocab words you have to learn, and that's how it goes. Okay, this is passive learning and passive teaching, okay? And the result of this is boredom, fatigue, disdain, right? A recent study by Yale actually showed that over 70% of high school students have negative emotions about going to school, about going to class. Negative emotions like being tired, stressed out, bored, right? So what I'm pitching today is active teaching and learning versus passive, okay? I'm interested to see whether if we take a active approach to teaching, if this is gonna improve these negative emotions and student learning outcomes, okay, in the classroom when compared to passive learning and teaching, okay? So, in order to do this, we're gonna ask a few research questions, okay? The first one, as I just mentioned, if we take an active approach, is it going to affect the students in a positive way when compared to passive teaching? All right. The second question we're gonna ask, and this is more in regards to the statistical variance. Does engagement participation increase as well? Okay, and who and for what groups does it increase or decrease? For example, if we take an active approach and there are a bunch of extroverts in class, it may seem obvious that they're gonna love that. But what about the introverted students or students who are more shy, right? Who need more time to warm up, who aren't just gonna vocalize their opinion right when somebody asks them? How's it gonna affect them? Okay, I'm also interested in finding that out. And my third part of the research question is, how is this gonna affect diverse learners? Those with IEPs, ELLs, and the gifted students, okay? Now, just to go into a little bit of literature review, I researched quite a few different sources, and I don't want to bore you all night with the details, but essentially what they said was that active learning did have a positive approach when used appropriately, but there are significant time investments that have to be done compared to passive learning. With passive learning, you get a big chunk of information out into the students for them to try to absorb in a relatively short amount of times. But when we're talking about active learning and teaching, it does take a higher time investment from both parties, which can be hard with deadlines and limited resources, okay? So, some of the gaps that my research is going to try to fill is, obviously this is going to be a little more niche because it is based in the social sciences and history. I want to see how it affects this specific subject as compared to just education as a whole, right? These other studies is more vague, it's more just primary school, and one was for theater class. And and just in general active learning. Mine is going to be more specific and a little more niche, which is why it's a classroom action research project. Okay. Now for my methodology, I'm going to be using qualitative and quantitative approaches. It's going to be mixed, but since it is a classroom research project, it will be mostly qualitative. Okay, for my quantitative approach, I do want to use formative and summative assessments in order to have a data pool. For example, on Wednesdays, we're going to take quizzes, right? We're going to have a 10-question quiz, for example. And based on those results, I can pull them together and see how they did based on whatever type of instruction that we offered for that week. Okay. For my formative assessments, we can still do the same thing with essays, how they're scoring on essays, topical research questions, anything that has a score on it that we can collect and add to our data pool, we're going to do that. Okay. For our qualitative approaches, we're going to break it down into interviews, surveys, and observations. Okay. So for observations, these are going to be helpful because it's going to be able to help me identify different patterns in the classroom. Okay. For example, which students are engaging naturally? Which ones aren't? Are any of the students taking up a lot more time than others? Are any students more on task than others, right? Are any students needing more assistance than others? These observations will help me form patterns for my data. Okay. Now, let's see here. Okay. For our next part, after our observations, we're going to do interviews, and it's going to be, it might vary week to week. Obviously, over this course of the study, you might need new or different interview questions, but these 3 questions should be foundational to every interview for the students, okay? First question being, how do you feel about class this week and the instruction you have received? Second question, what do you think could be improved? And third question, which part of the instruction do you feel is working well? Okay? These should be the foundation of the interview process for the students, so that way I can get a gauge of how they're feeling about the instruction, right? Whether it's good, bad, in between, kind of fluctuating. It's going to give us a good vibe of the classroom. Okay. And the last qualitative measure that I'm going to use to collect data is going to be surveys. All right. Now surveys will be done at the end of the week, so that way they can give me a good answer for how that whole week went for instruction. Okay. Another good thing about surveys is since they aren't face-to-face, for students who might be scared or just shy, or sometimes they're influenced by the power dynamic, like if the teacher asks you, oh, am I doing a bad job? Some of them might not tell you the truth to your face. But in an anonymous survey, hopefully they'll be a bit more honest. You can get a little more, not necessarily true data, but hopefully more accurate data, I should say. Okay. Now this study, if I have it my way, will last 3 months. Okay. The first month is going to be strictly passive teaching and learning, and then using these processes to gather data for that month. The second month, strictly active teaching and learning. Okay, so that way we can gather data for that month. And then the third one will be a mixture of both. Now by doing this, I hope to have a holistic approach to the classroom and be able to find patterns, if any, to be able to signify whether one is better than the other or not. Now, what I'm hoping to accomplish by this is just improving my own ability and helping those in my local area, the kids that I have direct influence over. According to different sites, National Center for Education Statistics and a Pew Research Center, America isn't even in the top 10 in education, in our public education system, right? So there's obviously room for improvement. So if I can do something to help in my own area, my own sphere of influence, to be able to help them and help myself, then I think it's a worthy endeavor. All right. Thank you guys for listening to my proposal. I hope to get the funding, and have a good night.